REIT is a real estate investment trust. So clients of ours, as part of their overall portfolio allocation, a percentage is typically allocated to the REIT space. There are really two primary ways to allocate to the real estate investment trust space. Publicly traded REITs, which are basically mutual funds or ETFs, so an exchange traded fund or a mutual fund based REIT, which is just like any other fund, which is highly liquid. There's also separately managed accounts, SMAs, where the investor actually owns the underlying securities that are in the account. So in other words, instead of a fund where you're the shareholder of a fund or a shareholder of an ETF, a separately managed account, you actually own the underlying companies, the corporations that are actually the real estate companies that are investing in the commercial properties or residential. So those are the publicly traded ways. The other way is a private placement, which is less liquid, and you would have higher minimums typically with those types of private equity funds. Every client is different, and we do customize the allocations that we manage for our clients. If an investor, an entrepreneur, to answer your question, already has a real estate portfolio of companies, properties that they've invested in on their own, depending on how heavily weighted they are as a percentage of their overall net worth, would dictate what percent of their overall investment portfolio we would put into REITs. And depending on the net worth of the individual, they may want to consider the private placement direction, at least for a portion of their assets, versus the publicly traded fund. So the private placements have higher minimums, like $250,000 or $500,000, for example. So we have an open architecture platform at UBS where we have the ability to allocate to just about any REIT that's out there, across different fund families. The principal funds has a pretty good separately managed account. Cohen & Steers has a great mutual fund. So we do the due diligence on the thousands, literally, of REIT funds that are out there in the universe, and then we narrow it down through a very rigorous vetting process to select what we like to call best in breed or best in class. So the best of the best REIT funds that are out there.
So being an insurance and risk advisor, I can appreciate that, because I know a few years ago the state of Massachusetts had certain statutory rules or things they were considering, because people were just kind of wild west with the REITs. I don't know if you were involved with any of that, but the state was sort of monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
Are there ways people delivering a REIT that's too risky? I mean, are those private?
The private placement, so there's with the private placement, because it's not SEC regulated, a private placement, there's all different types. And so there could be annual lockup, meaning annual liquidity, there could be quarterly liquidity. There are REIT private placement, really private equity type funds that have $1 million minimums, some have $250,000 minimums. But plain vanilla, everyday investor wanting to, $1 million, $2 million portfolio wanting to allocate to the REIT space is probably best served utilizing a combination of mutual funds and or separately managed accounts where they own the underlying securities.